going to start with question number 11. So I'll give you like a minute to solve this, and then I'll explain each question as we go through them. Okay, so for this one, it's saying that there's a scatter plot that shows a relationship between two variables, and it gives us a line of best fit. And it asks, how many data points does the line of best fit predict a greater y value than the actual y value? Basically, what that means is how many of the points are below the line of best fit. And so if you look at the graph, there are 4 points which are below the line of best fit at approximately 1, 6, 7, and 8 on the x-axis. So the answer here would be C. There's 4 points that are below the line of best fit. All right, question 12. I'll give you a minute to solve it. Okay, so for this one, we're given line K is defined by y equals 2x plus 14. So sort of like this. And it says line J is perpendicular. So perpendicular would be like this. So this is K, this is J. So if you remember, parallel means they have the same slope. Perpendicular means they have an inverse slope. And so it says, what is the slope of line J? Well, we know that from slope form. The slope of line K is 2. That means the slope of line J would be the inverse of this, which this 2 can be just turned into 2 over 1, and then do the inverse of that, which would just be negative 1 over 2, which would just translate into answer choice A. Because what you do is you just flip the numerator and denominator and then switch the sign. If you're going from a line to find the line perpendicular to it, which gets us answer choice A. All right, question 13. All right, so for this one, we're given in 2015, a certain country had an adult population of 250 million people, and then the rest of the information doesn't really matter for question 13. And then it says for 13, the adult population of this country in 2015 was 77% of the total population. Which of the following is the approximate total population of this country in 2015? And so what you do for this is you do the adult population in 2015 of this country, which is just 250 million people. And then you divide by the percentage, so divided by 0.77, which gets you 324.6. And it says, which of the following is an approximate total population? Well, the closest number to this is 320 million. So the answer choice here would be C. All right, question. All right, question 14. I'll give you a minute to solve it. Okay, so for question 14, it asks, sorry, what fraction of the adult internet users? So let's start with that. The adult internet users is 160 million. And it says what fraction of them access two or more social media websites? Well, if you read from the top, it says 52.8 million people had access to or more social media websites. So we do 52.8 million over 160 million, because 160 million were the number that used the internet. And so we get 2.8 over 160, which gets us 0.33. And which one of the answer choices correlates to 0.33? Well, that would be answer choice B, which is 33 over 100, which is the same thing as 0.33. Okay, question 15. Okay, so there's two ways to solve this. I'm going to show you the easier way, which will save you time. And so we have 10x plus 9 equals 9x plus 9 plus 25. And so for this, it says, what is the value of x plus 9? Well, what you can do is you can just set x plus 9 equals a, and then just substitute in a. So we have 10a equals 9a plus 25. If you subtract 9a from both sides, you get a equals 25. And so if you plug back into here, you get x plus 9 equals 25. And so the answer choice, it says, what is the value of x plus 9? It would be 25, which is answer choice C. So you don't actually have to multiply out all the x plus 9s. You can substitute. Okay, question 16. Okay, so for this question, I'm not really reading all that. It just says for the question, if a biologist wants an estimate that has a smaller margin of error associated with it and can be generalized to the entire population, which are the following changes. Well, if you want a lower margin of error, then you need to increase your sample size. So if you want to decrease your margin of error, you need to increase your sample size. And so which one of these correlates to that? Does A? No, it doesn't. Does B? No. C? No. D says selecting and measuring a larger random sample. So the answer choice here would be D, because you're increasing the sample size. And that's how you decrease the margin of error. All right, question 17. Okay, so for this one, it says the ratio of a diameter to circumference is 1 to pi. So basically what we're comparing is diameter to circumference. And so for that, the formula for circumference is just 2 pi r, which 2 times the radius is just diameter. So it's just diameter times the radius. That gets you the circumference. And so it says if the diameter is multiplied by 3, how will the circumference change? So if you just do 3 times the diameter, then the circumference would just be multiplied by 3. And so the answer to this would be answer choice C. It would just be multiplied by 3. Okay, question 18. Okay, so for this one, we're told to find the perimeter of the figure. And so to find the perimeter, we just have to find all the side lengths. So, I mean, you could go about this multiple ways. The way I went about it is I just saw what is the length of this entire side, and that would be 9 plus 2, which would be 11. So the length from here to here is 11. And the other side has to match it. So from here to here also has to be 11. And so here we have 8 plus 2, that's 10. And so these two figures must be half and half. This must be 0.5, and this must be 0.5. That gets you 8, 9, 10, and 11. And so now that we have those sides, what sides do we have left? We have this. And so we can basically do the same thing. So we have 7 here, and then this extra bit is 2.5. So this would be 9.5. And so if that's 9.5, then that means this also has to be 9.5. And so you do 9.5 minus 5, which gets you 4.5. So this side length becomes 4.5. And I think that's all the side lengths we would need. So we would do 2 plus 7 plus 2 plus this 2.5. Should be like here, and then plus the 0.5 plus 2.5 plus 8 plus another 2.5 plus 0.5 plus 5 plus 9 plus 4.5. And that gets you a total of 46. When you add up all those side lengths, you get 46, which would correlate to answer choice D. Okay, question 19. Okay, so for this one, it says what best compares the mean and standard deviation of the two data sets. And so for data set P, we see that it says the value 0 is seen once. So the lowest number would be 0. And the highest number is 9, and we see it twice. So 9, that means the range of data set P is 9. And then for data set Q, we see that the lowest value we see is 4, and we see it once. And the highest value we see is 13, and we see it twice. And so the range of this between 4 and 13 is also 9. So the ranges are the same. So that means that the standard deviation of B, or the standard deviation, which is B, equals the standard deviation of the other data set, which is D. So B equals D. And then the next thing we have to do is compare the means. And so the means are the average value, and as you can probably tell, data set P, the values go from 0 to 9, and it seems like a lot of values are near 4 and 5. And for data set Q, it goes from 4 to 13, and most of the values are near 8 and 9. So the mean for data set Q is greater than the mean for data set P. We could also calculate this, but that's going to take a lot of time. Generally, you don't want to waste like 5 minutes adding up values for a single question because you don't have that much time on the SAT. But you can tell from that dataset Q should be higher than dataset P, which means that the mean A is less than mean C. And so the only answer choice that says A is less than C and B equals D is answer choice B. So the answer to this question is answer choice B. Okay, question 20. Now, standard deviation isn't the same thing at range, but the reason why is because as you can see these frequencies, they're all about the same. So they have a 1 here and a 1 here. All of these numbers for the frequency are the exact same from both columns. We have 3 and 3, 3 and 3, 2 here, 4 here, 5 here, 6 here, 3 here, 2 here, 1 here, 1 here. They're all the exact same. So that's why you get the same thing no matter which one you calculate. Okay, so for this one, we have a circle with the center -1, 1, and we're given that the line tangent to it is at 4, -3. So that would be what? Right 5 and down 4. And we're given that this line is tangent, so it would originally be rise over 1, so 4/5, but because this line is tangent, we would flip it, so it would be 5/4. So using that, every time x increases by 1, the y increases by 5/4. And so if we're increasing from 4 to 8, that's a difference of 4. So 4 times 5/4 is just 20/4, which is just 5. So the y would increase by 5, which gets us 8, 2. So the answer choice here would be C. Basically, every time you increase x by 1, you're increasing y by 5/4. Okay, so someone asked, does that mean the circle grows? And so for this, it says line T is tangent, which of the following points also lies on line T. It doesn't say anything about us changing the circle or anything. It just says which one of these points is also on this line. And so the slope of line T is 5/4. And we're given one of the data points. We're not asked to find if the circle is expanding or not. We're just asked to find what else lies on line T.
If they have questions, instead of typing, they can also, unmute themselves and then ask. That's fine.
Okay, so for this one, we're given two systems of equations. It says where's the value of y. So basically, let's just first find the value of x. So we have 3x plus 6 equals y, and then we set them equal to each other. So 3x plus 6 equals -3x plus 9. And we add 3x both sides, so that gets us 6x plus 6 equals 9. And then you subtract 6 from both sides, that gets us 6x equals 3. Now we have x equals 3 over 6, which just becomes x equals 1/2. And now we need to find y. And so if we plug in 1/2 to the first equation, we get 3 times 1/2 plus 6 equals y. It gets us 3 over 2 plus 6 equals y. Y equals 7.5, which is answer choice B. Okay, question 22. Okay, so for this one, we're given that there are 618 gray wolves, and it covers an area of approximately 16,452 square miles, which the following is closest to the estimated population density in gray wolves per square mile. Well, if it's gray wolves per square mile, then it'd be 618 over this number, which would be less than 1, so the answer choice would be A. But we can also put it in our calculator and see that 618 over this number gets us 0.03756, which rounds to 0.04. So the answer is still A. Okay, question 23. Okay, so for this one, it gives us an equation. It says exactly how many x-intercepts does the graph have? And so for this question is a calculator question. You are allowed to use a graphing calculator on the SAT. I would not recommend trying to solve this by hand because that's going to take a lot of time or it's going to be very difficult to do. And so in your graphing calculator, you just plug in this function and you see how many times it crosses the x-axis. And if you do that, you'd get that it would cross the x-axis 3 times, which would get you an answer choice of B. All right, question 24. Okay, so for this one, there's not really much math to do. It's more of a statistics question. And so for this, we're given that they planted 1,000 seeds and they obtained it from 2 different packages. And the growing conditions were as identical as possible. And one of the soils had supplement added, and the second passage did not, or the second package of seeds did not. And how should the experiment be changed to allow the researcher to conclude whether the supplement had an effect on plant growth? And so for this one, the answer choice would be B. And the reason why is that so what she did is she took one packet of the seeds and she use that for the land with the supplement, and she used the other packet of seeds and used that as the control, so the one without the supplement. And so the problem with this is that nowhere in the question does it say that the seed packets were identical. So this seed packet could be like, I don't know, 500 years old, and the other seed packet could be like 10 years old. And we have no idea of telling that. And so the only way she'd be able to draw a conclusion if she uses half the seeds from each packet for this. So this is a statistics-based question. It's not really much math, I guess. Question 25. Okay, so for this one it says 0.07% by mass of a 12-gram sample is whatever they want to find. And what is the mass of this? And okay, so 12-gram sample. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to convert this 0.07% into a decimal. And so let me give you an example. If we had like 0.1, or if we had like 1%, that would be 0.01. And so 0.07% would be 0.0, and then you add two more zeros, 7. So whenever you want to translate into a percent, it'd be sort of like this, where you just move the decimal place left 2 units. And so the same thing for this, we'd move it left 2 units, which would get us 0.0007 times 12, because it's 12 grams. That gets us 0.0084 grams, which would be answer choice A. Okay, question 26. Okay, so for this one, we're given an equation. We have 1.1 times 1.066 to the power of t, and that represents the number of years after 1990, and which of the following in population in millions represents the number of years after 1995. So basically, what we're doing is we're adding 5 to the time for when we're starting. And so we have 1.1 times this, and so none of the answers match that, so we need to actually divide this up further. And so one of our exponent rules is x to the power of, say, I don't know, some number, let's say like x to the power of third times x squared. Well, this you could just simplify into x to the fifth power, because it'd be x to the third plus x squared, so that becomes x to the fifth power. And so for this, we have something similar. We have, this can be divided up into 1.1 times 1.066 to the t power times 1.066 to the fifth power, because we're basically just doing the same thing. Instead of using x, we're using 1.066, and it's basically the same thing. Also, 5 is just 3 plus 2. That's sort of why that I just use those numbers, but that's why you get 1.1 times 1.066 to the t power times 1.006 to the fifth power, which is answer choice C. Question 27. Okay, so for this one, what I'd recommend you do is you just graph it in your calculator. So the first thing I did is if we graph a value for C, and so for the examples, for the answer choices, we have C equals 9 or C equals 6 or greater than less than. So the first thing I did was chose C as 9 and did x squared plus 6x plus 9 and graph that. And you'd get something like this. And this one has only one real solution. And so the answer choice C equals 9 cannot be correct, nor can it be C is greater than 9. It can't be either of those, because if C is greater than 9, then the graph of this would move up and then there would be no real solutions. And so then I tried, okay, well, what if C is less than 9? And so if it's less than 9, then the graph would actually move down. And so that would mean that since this is the vertices, even if this is like slightly less, like if C is 8 or something, it would still have two real solutions. And so the answer choice should be D. You basically have to just find where it has one real solution, and then any number below that would have two real solutions. And the reason why it's not A, where C equals 6, is because there are other values of C which still make the equation true. Like C can be 8, C can be 7, C can also be 0, and it would still have two distinct real solutions. So it's not necessary for it to be 6. Okay, question 28. Okay, so for this one, it's basically just asking us for an equation of the line for the points that they gave. And so for this one, at 0.1, the glucose is about 10. So that means that for the y-intercept, at 0, it's probably going to be a lot less than 10. So it can either be answer choice A or B. Answer choice C and D have y-intercepts that are too high for this line to be possible. And then the next part is the slope. And so slope is every time x increases by 1. And so for this, we have whenever x increases by 0.5, we get like about 50. So when it increases by 1, it should increase by around 100. And so the closest to that is answer choice A, which is 90. Because for answer choice B, 1.5 plus 10x, you can just plug in any of these points. Like if we plug in 0.6 times 10, we get um we get 6 plus 1.5, which gets us 7.5, which is not the 50 that we see graphed. Whereas if we plug that into the 90x, we would get a value that's much closer to the graph that we are given. Okay, question 29. Okay, so for this one, it says a piece of paper is cut 2 times, resulting in 3 smaller pieces of paper. And so basically, when the number of cuts is 2, so because it says the piece of paper is cut 2 times, we get 3 smaller pieces of paper. So when C is 2, y equals 3, and so if we just plug this into our answer choices, for A, we would have 3 to the power of 2 over 2, which is just 3 to the first power, which is just 3. So A does work. If we plug this into the rest of the answer choices, we get 2 over 2 plus 1, which is just 3 to the second power, which is 9. So B can't work because 9 is not equal to 3. For C, we have 3 to the fourth power, which is definitely above 3. And then for D, we have 3 to the fifth power, which is still above 3. So the answer here would be A. So number of cuts is 2, and we end up with 3 smaller pieces of paper. So when C is 2, the result has to be 3. So the only answer choice that works with that is answer choice A. Question 30. Okay, so for this one, so we're given that there's 640 acres in 1 square mile. And then it says use 1 kilometer is 0.062 miles. And so the first thing we need to do is convert the 640 acres per square miles. Well, I should just write it like this. Miles squared, 640 acres per mile squared into how many acres per kilometer squared. So we're given 1 kilometer is 0.62 miles. And so we need to translate this. So we take the square root. Okay, so basically we would do both of these squared because it's miles squared and kilometers squared. So 1 kilometer squared and 0.62 miles squared. Because 1 kilometer is 0.62 miles, and you need to get the two values squared. So 0.62 squared gets you 1 mile squared equals 0.3844 kilometers squared. And then, now that you have that translation, you can just plug that in, and you do this 0.3844 kilometers times 640, because that's the number of acres in 1 mile, which would get you 246.016. And then what you do is you do 1 over this, because it's because we're multiplying here. Technically it would be 640 to the negative first power, because sorry, not that this, but 0.3844 to the negative first power, because you're dividing, it's 640 divided by that. But since we're multiplying here, it's basically this number to the negative first power. And so we need to do the same thing here when we get our answer, which we would have to do 1 over 246 times that, which would get us 0.004065, which rounds to 0.0041, which is answer choice D. And so basically what I did is I just multiplied this to the negative first power, and then when we got our answer of this, I just multiplied this to the negative first power, just to make it a little bit easier. Okay, question 31. Okay, so this one is super easy. It says how many paddle boats were counted on the lake at 2 p.m. And so you go to the time, 2 p.m. and you see the number of paddle boats, which is 7. And I don't think I've ever seen an SAT question this easy. But yep, that's what the answer sheet says too. Yep, it is definitely 7. That's pretty easy. All right, question 32. Okay, so for this one, given that they spent a total of 9K or 9,000 on digital and print ads. So digital plus print. And it says the ratio of money spent on digital ads to print ads was 1 to 3. So digital is 1, print is 3. And so how much money did this company spend on digital ads? Well, this would just be 3 plus, we just plug these numbers in. So we would get digital print is 4. And then we'd do 9,000 divided by 4, which gets us 2,250. And it says they spent 1 to 3 on digital print ads. So the answer would just be 2,250. If they asked us how much did they spend on print ads, we would just multiply this by 3. Okay, question 33. Okay, so for this one, we're just using the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So for this, we would have a is 1, b is 2, c is negative 1. So when we plug in our values, we get negative 2 plus or minus root 4 minus 4 times 1 times negative 1 all over 2 times 1. And so now we need to simplify. Okay, so we get negative 2 minus root 8 over 2. And then we'd have to simplify the root 8. So root 8 would just be root 4 times root 2. And then root 4 just becomes 2 root 2. So we would get negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 2 all over 2. And these two cancel out and these two cancel out. So you would get negative 1 plus or minus root 2. There's no space. So I'll just erase this top part. Basically, that gives you negative 1 plus or minus root 2. And then for this equation, they move negative 1 to the right. So you get plus or minus root 2 minus 1 because they move the 1 to the right. And so it says, what is the value of k? Well, k would be 2. Okay, question 34.
We will end the session after this class, after this 34 number. Okay, Pusha?
Okay, so for this one of the things you kind of have to do is you have to start with some sort of degrees Fahrenheit. Otherwise, you'll get a negative degrees Celsius. So you can choose like any value for X right now. It doesn't really matter. But the main thing is that whatever value you choose for X, you'll have to increase that by 19.8. And so let's just say X is 50 right now. Okay, well then we can just do 50 minus 32 times 5/9. And you can use any value for X. You can even use like 40 or 30 or whatever. I'm just using 50 here as an example. But you do, which is 18 times 5/9, which is just 10. And then for the next part, it says if the temperature increased by 19.8, so you just do this plus 19.8, which would get you 69.8 degrees. And so you just plug that in. Which gets you 21. And so you just find the difference between these two. So 21 minus 10, which gets you 11. And so you can use any starting value. Like I use 50 here, but you can use like 30, you can use 40, you can use whatever starting value you want, as long as you're not ending up with a negative degree Celsius, because that causes some problems when you're finding your answer. And I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you everybody for joining us. We'll continue next week with the rest of the questions and we'll start another question paper. I believe this. How many questions are left after this, Pushya?
A few.
Okay. So after that, we'll start another question then. Thank you. We'll see you again on Sunday, next Sunday at 5 o'clock CST. Thank you. Bye-bye.